Which orchid fertilizer is going to be best for your orchids? There's such a wide variety of products out there, it's almost impossible to find which is going to be the best one for you. So let's have a look into them and see what is going to be the best orchid fertilizer to get the biggest blooms and the fastest growth on your orchids. There's one product that all orchid growers should be using with their orchids, no matter what fertilizer they use. Welcome to the Nature Company. If this is the kind of information you're interested in, please hit that subscribe button down below and that notification bell to be notified of all our upcoming content so you don't miss out on a thing. All orchid enthusiasts, growers and collectors land up with a table of different plant foods like this. We've either got shelves and shelves of different products or the stuff scattered all over the show. And still, do we really know what's going to be best for our orchids and make them flower? What are the best ways of choosing which products to use and when to use them? With the wide variety of products available, let's break them down into categories to help us. We've got the organic products, chemical products or synthetic products, and the homemade cures and potions. Starting to look at the organic products, they come in a wide variety of different ingredients that are used, from vegetable extracts, blood and bone products. There's even naturally occurring compounds such as Epsom salts, which is magnesium sulfate. There's seabird guano, compost teas. There's such a wide variety of different ones available, and they all have different nutrient profiles. So then it starts becoming difficult to choose, because how do we know which ones are going to be best? Not all of them have their nutrient profiles listed, although a lot of them nowadays will have some sort of NPK attributed to them. With your chemical or your synthetic fertilizers, these all have specific NPK values and generally sold as such. They'll have things like 30-10-10, 20-20-20, all sorts of different variations on these NPK values. And NPK stands for the nitrogen, the phosphorus, and the potassium. So this is giving you the percentages of these nutrients available in the product. So we have growth promoters with high nitrogen percentages. We have bloom initiators with high phosphorus percentages. And we have seedling root initiators with high potassium percentages. So that all starts getting a bit confusing when you're trying to grow your orchids, if you're just trying to get your basic out of them. So that's often why you land up using generalized ones, which are things like your 20-20-20, which have an equal percentage of all three of your nutrients right the way through. Also with these synthetic ones, you'll find that a lot of them come with micronutrients added and even calcium and magnesium. But there's something that we have to add about that calcium and magnesium, which we'll get to when we start deciding on which orchid fertilizer is the best. And then we get to things like your homemade kitchen cures and potions. These are all recipes from things that you generally have in your kitchen. So they vegetables, they fruits, they herbs and spices, all sorts of manner of different things that can go into these to produce homemade orchid fertilizers. And are these any good? Can they produce the growth out of our orchids? Well, let's have a look at all of these and see what is actually going to be best for your orchids. So when looking at this large range of products available, you can see not all orchid fertilizers are made equal. But then again, not all orchids are grown in the same way. What orchid fertilizer you choose is all up to how you grow your orchid, where you grow it, and the cultural practices you use in growing your orchids. If you're going organic and worried about not only the health of your plants, but the health of your pets and yourselves and your family, and you want to ensure that there's no toxic chemicals in your environment, then organic is a good way to go. There's a few things that you have to be aware of. Things like seabird guano is incredibly high in nitrogen. So when using something like that, you are going to have to be very careful with your dilution ratios. You're going to have to dilute this down a lot. Things like seaweed extract have auxins and gibberellins in them, which are plant hormones, which are going to affect your plant in different ways, either by helping promote root growth or increasing the number of lateral buds that will then shoot. All of these products have different nutrient profiles and are often on lower percentages of nutrient available in each of the categories. But that's not to say it's a bad thing, because often these nutrients are available in a form that the plant itself can use. So it's not relying on the fact that other external environmental factors are going to be needed to break down those nutrients into usable forms for the plant. But one of the big downsides of these organic fertilizers is often the scent. Some of them smell like what they are, rotting vegetables or seabird guano, and we really don't want that in our house. So we may have to go for some of the more modern ones that are scentless, because even sometimes that seaweed extract can actually be a bit fishy in scent that can last about 2 or 3 days before we will then be able to move our plant back indoors to enjoy the plant. There's that sort of thing that we also need to take into consideration when choosing our fertilizers. With the chemical fertilizers, we can choose specific nutrient profiles that are going to be particularly effective for our plant at their specific growth phases. Or we can just choose a generalized one that has got all those macronutrients along with the micronutrients, and the plant is going to do incredibly well. Often I don't like to feed my orchids with a multi-feed if it has calcium and magnesium included in it, because often there are interactions between the different nutrients which makes some of them unavailable to the plant. So I rather keep my calcium and magnesium as a separate feed on a separate day or separate occasion, so that we don't have any of those bad interactions causing certain nutrients not to be able to be absorbed. Also, if you have hard water, meaning that there are a lot of dissolved solids in your water, often that means there's enough calcium and magnesium in your water itself that you're not going to be needing to add them separately. So it's all of these small little details that you need to look at when choosing your orchid fertilizer. And these homemade products, there is a lot of anecdotal evidence on the effectiveness of these, but you don't have to just be encouraged to use them by that. There is scientific proof that these homemade cures can be good for your orchids. They have nutrient values and other organic compounds that help your orchid. So things like your rice water, your garlic water, your onion water, and even that banana water, that have all been proven to have specific components in them that are helpful to your orchid's growth. So now that we know all of them are helpful to our orchid growth, how do we choose? For one, it's got a lot to do with the media that you're growing it in. If you're growing it in an inorganic media, you'll often find if you're not flushing enough, you'll get salt buildups using the chemical compounds. If you're using an organic media such as bark, you might find you're not getting enough nitrogen from certain of the organic products, because it has been suggested that as the bark decomposes, it uses up the nitrogen before the orchid can get it. There's a little bit of indecision in this, because perhaps you want to try and reduce the amount of nitrogen in it to help reduce the amount of decomposition that will take place. And your orchid is going to absorb those nutrients really quickly. We know how fast that velamen can absorb water into it, and it will absorb those nutrients along with it. So perhaps that might not be too much of a thing to worry about. And with your chemical fertilizers, they're a lot easier to store and have on hand all the time. So they can be a quick and easy to use alternative, especially growing in an indoor environment. And along with that, in certain parts of the world, fungus gnats can be problematic indoors, and your chemical feeds may be less likely to attract them than what some of the organic alternatives may do. But organic fertilizer may allow for faster generation of that mycorrhizal fungi and the beneficial bacteria. So we're trying to balance how we grow our orchids so that we're going to get the best out of them. And one of the ways we can do it is through adding those probiotics to our orchid mix. If we're using our probiotics regularly, it's going to help introduce all those beneficial bacteria and that mycorrhizal fungi that help the orchid in absorbing all the nutrients that we're going to be feeding it. And along with that, they outcompete any of those pathogenic fungi and bacteria. So it's going to help keep your orchid in a healthier state. So by choosing an orchid fertilizer that suits your needs and your orchid's growing habitat, and by adding a simple thing such as your probiotics, you're probably going to land up with having great success. But always remember, one of the tricks of feeding orchids is feed them weekly, meaning feeding them weak amounts of fertilizer often. This is generally how they get fed in nature, with that rain coming down and bringing the nutrients with it. So let's try and keep it as simple as possible to keep your orchids as healthy as possible. And remember always, when feeding, remember to flush. Whether you're flushing once a month or once a week, depending on the quantities of fertilizer you're using, flushing is always going to be important to remove those excess salts. So the answer to the eternal question, what is the best orchid fertilizer for orchids? It's any fertilizer, as long as you're using it correctly. Learning to use them correctly is going to be the key. I'm going to be doing an upcoming video to teach you how to use these properly with regards to their nutrient profiles and their NPK ratios, so that we can get the right quantity of nutrients to our orchids. Ed has put a lot of orchid fertilizer content in that Buy Me a Coffee link down below. Pop down, have a look. He also posts up a lot of members exclusive content, so if you want access to that too, feel free and sign up. Thank you for watching. If you found any of this content helpful, please hit that like button, hit that subscribe button down below, and that notification bell, bing bong, to be notified of all our upcoming content so you don't miss out on a thing. Help us grow as we help your orchids grow.